We are live.
Live. This is Senate Appropriations, February 18th. We're going to finish the Budget Adjustment Act of fiscal year 25, but right now we're talking about the fiscal year 26 budget and going through testimony from different agencies and departments on their fiscal 26 budget. So today we have Human Rights Commission in to talk about their FY26 budget. I'll let you introduce yourself and we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. My name is Big Hartman. I'm the Executive Director and General Counsel of the State of Vermont Human Rights Commission. My pronouns are they, them. Thanks so much for having me here again. I do apologize, I didn't bring my laptop to project the budget book for the HRC. If that can be done by...
I can do that for you, Beg.
I can do it. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm like, I just want to hold the papers in my hand. I'm not the computer screen person. Thank you,
Will you hit that okay while you're up there? Thank you.
1 second here.
Is it also posted? So it's also posted on the website if people want to look that way. Senator Norris. Thank you.
I feel like I was here fairly recently sharing with you all about the work of the Human Rights Commission, so I'm not sure how much more you want me to restate that. I do have some sort of bullet points, I'll call them, in the slides in this budget book. But generally, the Human Rights Commission has 7 full-time staff members, and we receive about 8% of our budget is set aside to be from federal funds. Otherwise, our budget is almost exclusively from the general fund. The federal funds derive from a HUD contract for investigating our fair housing discrimination cases, which are the at least half of our caseload at any given time. As we sit here today, we really don't know what the future of that funding is for the year ahead. To be perfectly honest, it's kind of a moving target, and we are hearing reports just this week for the first time that the federal government does have its eyes on HUD as a source for likely significant cuts to affordable housing programs and the civil rights protections, which would include parts of our funding potentially. So we just don't know where that's going to land, and as soon as I have more information, I will be over here in this building to share with folks if there is a significant change in federal funding. Hopefully I won't need to have that conversation, but seems like all bets are off right now. Just in general with our budget, about 90% or more of our budget is our salaries and benefits, and the rest is our operating expenses that are really not negotiable, or I'm not seeing any way that I can change what those operating expenses are. So the slide that's up is just kind of an overview of our work, our commission, and I have slide 10 and 11 that provide a summary of our jurisdiction and our process, which I did address with you all when I was here a couple weeks ago talking about budget adjustment for fiscal year 25. In fiscal year 24, we really saw a significant increase in the number of complaints that we both accepted and closed. We were able to complete more investigations, largely because we innovated our processes and we simplified and streamlined both our case management methods and our way of writing investigative reports, so that my investigators were able to close more cases this year than ever before. We are on track to continue that trajectory this year, as now for this current fiscal year 25, we will have been using those new methods all year long, and they were kind of brought on over the course of fiscal year 24. So we're very happy that we are able to close more cases than ever, but we really have no choice because we are accepting more cases than ever, and we are fielding more and more inquiries than we ever have. In our annual report, which I shared with you last time I was here, I was able to gather a lot of data about our demand for our services. We get over 100 requests a month for new complaints, and all over the course of the entire year last year, we only accepted 59 for investigation. So we really do have to turn folks away practically every day, and we are experiencing a significant backlog, as we discussed when I was here last. I also think that there's a lot of room for improvement with the prevention work that's possible in our state. We really don't have the capacity right now to do a lot of preventive outreach work to get the word out for, landlords and business owners and others who are subject to the anti-discrimination protections to know what they need to do to comply with the law. We also don't get enough bandwidth for the kind of know your rights trainings that would ensure that all the monitors were aware of the protections that apply to them. So these, go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me. So out of the 59 or 60 that you are able to take in as a report, can you give me some idea as to how many of those were actually substantiated as yes, it was discriminatory?
I sure can. And that is summarized in slide 12.
Oh, well, once we get there, then that's fine.
I wasn't necessarily going to get there, so I'm happy that you asked the question. Any other specific questions that anyone has, I'm happy to field. So we accepted that 59 new cases. So it says 57 new complaints up there, but it's that's just our formal complaints. We had 2 informal complaints that were basically, we didn't do a whole investigation. We just kind of wrote a letter and got the problem solved. But those are new complaints that came in. We had cases from prior years that we were able to close. So we closed 42 cases total. 33 of those went all the way to a commission meeting where the commissioners made a decision, and 22 of those were reasonable grounds cases. So about 2/3 of the cases that we heard in fiscal year 24 were found to have reasonable grounds to believe that discrimination occurred. And then the other closures we had, 6 of those settled before a determination, and 3 had either been dismissed or withdrawn by the complainants. So, and we were also really pleased with how much we were able to see the average age of our cases go down this year. I was reporting to your committee for fiscal year 23 that we had averaged 649 days to close an investigation, which is a very long time for the parties to have to wait to find out whether they violated the law or whether they were wrongly discriminated against. We were able to significantly improve that with streamlining our processes this year. So now our average age of case for fiscal year 24 was down to 474, but that's still way longer than anyone wants to see our process take. And that doesn't even include the age that a case is in intake process, which is sometimes several months on top of the length of the investigation. So we're hoping to see that average case age go down this year. We are, moving cases as quickly as we can, but we have had staff turnover and investigator turned over this year because of severe burnout. And without more staff, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to significantly improve the average age of cases yet. But our HUD wants us to have cases closed within 100 days. They consider a case aged at 200 days. We did not meet the 100-day mark in one single case in fiscal year 24. We made a couple in under a year, but largely it's 400 or more days. Despite our best efforts to improve our processes, it's still, in my mind, not the level of service that we want to be providing.
Does any state meet the 100-day mark?
There are states that are able to meet that 100-day mark on 50% of their cases or more. We are not in that position now.
And do they have more investigators and more people involved?
Yes. And we do provide a slightly elevated level of investigative process because we do live interviews of any witness. And we, instead of just like asking one side to submit a position paper and asking the other side to submit a position paper and making a decision based on that, we really do extensive investigative processes, which parties really appreciate. We really get good feedback on the level of detail we put into our investigation, how comprehensive they are. There's a price to pay for that, which is waiting. So I'm happy to field any more questions about our process, but I know we're here to talk about the budget, so I'll turn to that if that feels like a good use of our time. So on the budget development form, I believe it's called, on page 7, this is like the ups and downs. Is that what you're calling it? There's a word for it. Okay. So I just wanted to flag a couple of things for you on this. One is that it looks like there's a significant change in our other personal services line and an increase in our salary and wages and health insurance and all of those things. That is the fact that when we created a new position 2 years ago for fiscal year 24, the litigator position has always been a field on the other personal services line of our budget. It hasn't been in with all the other types of salaries and benefits line items. So it's not a plus or a minus, it's really just moving that personal service line to a different, but spreading it out over the other budget lines that I'm not really sure why, but that's where it should be, spread out over the salary and wages, health insurance, retirement, and other benefit lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I just also wanted to flag for you the vacancy turnover savings line. As you know, in budget adjustment this year, we were trying to address the vacancy turnover savings that was budgeted around $24,000. We are, this vacancy turnover savings line is reflecting that there's $758 more that we're budgeting for additional vacancy turnover savings on top of last year's vacancy turnover savings. So this is to meet the target of the governor's recommend. I don't think that there's any reason to predict that we will have a significant vacancy turnover savings again next year. But this is the way that we get to the target that was requested of us. So if I had my way, I would not have a vacancy turnover savings built into the budget once again. But that isn't really my decision. And then I have submitted a separate memo for you that summarizes the additional positions that we are requesting, which we requested of the governor's office and did not get into the budget. I'm happy to discuss that with you today. There's also H38 is hopefully going to make its way through the State House this year, which actually lists all of those positions and is proposing to expand our services in that way.
So the 8 positions, is that the main thing that you asked for that wasn't included in the governor's recommendation?
Yes, and the associated operating expenses with having that many new staff, like computers and office space. And so my memo just gives you a summary of what those positions are envisioned to be doing. Primarily, we've got 3 new investigators we're proposing, which would double our current investigative capacity. With 3 investigators currently, and with increased capacity to do investigations, to be able to really move those through, we'd be able to accept more investigations. than we're able to right now, and have them get processed in a more timely manner. And I think we're already contemplating, and we're really grateful that your committee is taking up the issue of the intake specialist position, hopefully for the Budget Adjustment Act, and so that position would be one of those that are also being contemplated for.
So it would be, this intake specialist in your memo would be addition to the one in the BA, that you would need, the same with, because in the BA, there's also one attorney.
In the BAA, there's one attorney. I think in order to meet the current needs, we really need 3. So it wouldn't be 3 in addition to the one, it would be 1 and 2 more. And the intake, just having one full-time intake person would significantly make our caseload more manageable, and the new inquiries something that we'd be able to actually process in a timely manner. Today I returned a phone call to someone who thought she had filed a complaint with us in August, and we lost the call, and there's no complaint. And those I'm still cleaning up from having turnover in the administrative position from this summer.
Yeah, which is also we hear the same situation from state attorneys. Very large cases, wait times, difficulty taking on all this work.
Yes, and I think we will continue to have difficulty with retaining staff as I am increasing their caseload every day, and they're experiencing a lot of burnout. I've been with the commission since 2021, and I've seen 7 people leave in that time, and there was only 6 positions for most of that time. So then we're losing the experienced staff. We're losing the people who have that institutional knowledge, and that slows down the whole process as you onboard new staff and just orient them to our entire, system and our statute and all of that. It really slows down the process even more.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Is the ADS folks coming in person?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So they might be in the hallway? Let's see, it's,
Yeah, that's fine.
Should be at least, yeah.
They've already had. Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
To the lawyers.
The other questions? Earlier. We could have to call. It's been a week ago.
Yeah,
We could go
it's a week
for it.
ago. That's fine.
Welcome. We're continuing our testimony on FY26. It's your lucky day turn to give us some information on your FY26 budget request.
Perfect, thank you. So for the record,
Yeah.
Denise Riley Hughes, Secretary of the Agency of Digital Services and the State Chief Information Officer. I come alone. My Chief Financial Officer is ill and won't be joining us, which,
Who is that we met?
Kate Slocum. So I'm gonna do my best impression of Kate. But really, I think for us only having 30 minutes, I don't want to go through every single slide, but I want to make sure that we cover what's relevant for all of you. Other than the standard ADS budget request, there's one component that is different that I think that we'll spend more time on if the committee would like.
Okay.
So we had sent the slide deck previously, so you should have access to
We have
that.
it on the, it's on
And
the
you should be able
website.
to present it to, okay,
If
perfect.
you want to present it now. That's helpful.
Given the 30-minute window, if you would be okay with it, if we could start on slide 6, which is just a quick overview of the 2 different top-line recovery models that we use when it comes to the ADS budget. We are the only other service agency besides Agency of Administration, and so when we look at some of the ADS budget asks, most of it is around supportability and requests for the agencies that we're supporting, and sometimes you'll see projects in there.
So this is the allocation and demand slide?
Correct. So we have a couple slides that go into detail on this, but
And the service level agreements is the main way you're getting the money in from all the different agencies and state workers that you're supporting.
correct. So the CIT fund, I think, is where that overarching top level internal service fund is sitting for ADS. We do have an IT modernization fund, but that doesn't come up when we look at the FY26 budget specifically because it's a separately managed fund. So there are 2 categories under that, allocation being just the foundational IT services. That is a number that has not changed that much over time, and I'm going to show you a chart in a couple other slides that explains that. And then the demand, one component of the demand is SLA, which is service level agreement. And I have a little credit card on there because that's the one that we refer to as the credit card. Anything under SLA is a recovery category where we charge a year in arrears. So the services or the technology is consumed in, let's say, FY25, and we will invoice the agencies and departments in FY26.
But we're gonna change that.
We are gonna change that. Well, we're hoping to,
Yeah.
if you allow it.
Yeah.
Timesheet billing is another one. And then we have some residual pre-ADS models, which is the telecom communication, and then obviously bespoke. So the telecom, I think, carried over because the telephony side, the landlines, the phones, those were billed separately under a different model. And so although it's still covered under demand, it's its own separate broken out line.
Government offices.
Oh,
You could
Guess so.
email gov ops and being loud.
Turn it down a megahertz or something.
Yeah.
so if we jump to 7, that's just a quick explanation of, you'll notice that there's an $8 million overall drop in base. And the reason for that is a lot of the money that you're seeing in base would cover components of project costs. And we have a number of projects over the next 18 months that are going to be moving out of implementation phase and into the maintenance and operations phase. And typically in that, you'll start seeing drops in costs because you're not paying for the same resources. It's still, although the project is now post go live, it ends up being a lesser cost from a budget impact standpoint. So I am visual, which is very different than my CFO, who could talk spreadsheets all day long. But I think this gives the greatest depiction between allocation, which you'll see in green, and demand that you'll see in blue. And so this looks at over time since fiscal year 20, where the growth has happened. The red in that graph indicates overall budget. And so you'll see allocation, which is traditional, baseline IT services, has really not changed much. This year, we do have a projected increase of 10%. And that was something that we worked with Commissioner of Finance and Management on to start accounting for specific IT services in that area. And what we would like to see is, you like to see a drop in the demand. which is where you have a lot of feedback around IT spend is, it's too high. I don't know what we're paying for. I can't predict what the spend is. And if anybody has a credit card with a $0 or an unlimited limit, you're not gonna know what you spend it on. And I think that's what we're seeing
Right.
in our demand spending is we're seeing an increase in SLA, and we need to pull the reins in a little bit on that.
And how much of that is storage? Like data storage, is that like the majority of it, or is that a really small percentage?
It's a small percentage.
Senator Bruce.
Can I ask, and I appreciate, I am also a visual person, what's the difference between the budget and demand?
So the budget's the red, so that's just the allocation and demand collected together. So it's just a visual depiction to show that demand is 92% of the budget.
Demand is.
I don't understand what demand is.
Demand is like the services that the agencies are demanding of the agency, where the allocation is just kind of like the Microsoft suite, kind of basic.
One would hope it would be, but that ends up not being the case. In the $15 million ask that we're gonna talk about in a second, it will include that.
So like licensing fees and all that stuff, it's like,
So-
you'll give a basic level, but they say, like, well, we need 20 license for X part of the Microsoft suite. That's gonna add to the cost. You do that as part of demand, not part of the allocation.
Correct. And right now, we do all of it as part of demand, and we would like to actually do the baseline, the foundations, as allocation. And so we've never done that before. Being able to assess any user, department, or agency coming into state government, what are the non-negotiables? You have to have security, you have to be connected to the network, you have to be able to have a basic identity, productivity, email, basic storage that everybody else gets. And we've never broken that out. And so we had a chance to work with finance and management over the last 18 months to pull up a model that actually starts defining those services and puts a cost model in place to have just foundational services. So then next year, if this was to go through and be approved, we would have an opportunity to start scrutinizing the demand, because that would be everything beyond foundational services. So why do we need more? And that should also
It's like
start driving-
education spending. They're switching to a foundation formula because their foundation formula was way too low.
That's how this is. So we're looking at 12,000 users across state government. We've been operating at about $11 to $12 million in foundational spend. That doesn't cover anything. What it's been is a spread across those foundational services to drive the demand recovery rates down, but it's not actually paying for anything in its entirety.
And do you have demand by agency department?
We have it broken down, and that's how they get their invoices and their bills, but
Not what you show us. Like, I just wondered if there was some agency, so if the 124 million of demand you're expecting, or let's go backwards, like in the FY24, the 119 million is like 40% of that, or something. Like we heard from sheriffs and state's attorneys that their SLA went way up because of the body camera footage and maybe there were other things, but that was one example. I didn't know if the demand is being driven by a small group of agencies, or is it really spread around? Everybody's using more.
everybody.
Okay, Senator Lyons?
So, yeah, that gets to my question on how do you, or who, and how is assessment done of the actual need for the demand and the relevance of the demand? I don't want to sound like a Department of Government Efficiency, but is there any, I shouldn't have brought that one up, but is there any oversight to what is being asked for? I know some of it comes from us and some of it doesn't, so.
You're hitting on exactly why we need to move into this new model that you're proposing. Because although there's oversight, if you ask for it, there's not a lot of mechanism to say, but this is outside the foundations. So now you have to prove why you need it. We don't have that management level in place today because the recovery model allows for a credit card without a limit.
So like a state employee might say, I want to have access to this new program, I need a license. You might say, well, do you really need it? They could just say, well, my boss said I need it,
Yeah.
so you would give it to them and then charge them for it at the end of the year. And then they come to us for budget adjustment and say, we need more money because
Right.
ADS sent us a big SLA budget. So
That
there's
year.
nobody, there's not like an appropriations committee on all that, kind of calculating it all and
Correct.
saying, no, we're above our total state limit.
Correct. And we don't, I'm sure you can appreciate that we unfortunately manage things on spreadsheets. So there's really no way for ADS to validate that there is budget spending available to that particular agency when they ask for it. We just have a recovery model to charge them back.
And you don't look to see, like some agency wanted 6 licenses for a program, but then 5 years later, they only have 2 people to working on that program, but they still have the 6 licenses. Is that?
You're getting to the crux of why we have the challenges that we have, yes.
But is that, so like nobody's really responsible for doing that at this point?
No, and so we've identified that as the need for the asset management, the IT asset management piece, and so we can do IT asset inventory and we can do identification, but we don't really have a mechanism for the management piece.
Yeah, seems to be a problem.
Yes, so this is a first step to get there. My hope is that next fiscal year, I'm going to be coming to you after having a well thought out solution of options to say, we know that it's going to cost this, but we do need to have a tool in place to be able to do this more effectively. The ERP system is going to help us with some of that, but that's going to take 4 years, and we can't wait 4 years to fix some of this.
Okay. Any other questions?
So, I feel like I'm like the bearer of bad news. We are trying to fix it.
Well, it's good news that you're gonna fix it.
We are gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it together.
And then you can move on to education spending.
I know where my limits are. So core enterprise services is what we've been calling it because it is the foundational services. What this also does, it allows for equity in services. We have been maintaining the pre-ADS model of billing and invoicing, as well as resourcing across state government. So if you came into ADS having 65 technical staff associated with your agency, much of that is still in place. And it opens the door for one agency to get a bunch of resources and do it this way, and another agency to get no resources and not be able to do it anyway. And so being able to move into a core services model, it allows for consistency across services. And so we've outlined those into these 7 key categories, which is reliable network access. The flood in 23 really exacerbated that when everybody had to work in different locations, and the network was predicated on your physical location. And if you weren't in that physical location, you couldn't actually access the network if you went to another office building. We broke that quickly. And in order to do that, network has to be a non-negotiable. It has to be a core service that no matter what state office building that you're in, you should be able to access state services. And this should, in this model, also open the door in the next levels down for constituents too. So to be able to start establishing those standard services across the board. Base productivity would be email. You guys know it as OneDrive, SharePoint. Everybody should at least have an entry point in to those services. Secure identity, help desk, device support, our data and system security. I did find it interesting when I came here is that users actually thought that security was optional. And we are dealing with some pretty sensitive data and information that it's, in our opinion, in my opinion, not negotiable. So this now sets a baseline to say this, you can't go below this. You can go up if needed, but you can't go below. And then data center essentials. One of the challenges that we have is when a particular platform is chosen and we want to be able to maximize the economies of scale to say, okay, if the platform costs this much money, but if everybody's on board and everybody's using it, then they won't stray off and go buy their own, which is, you're seeing some of that now. If we create the foundations for it, then the foundation already exists, so now it just becomes a lighting another user up because it's already there to be powered. So we've worked extensively with my finance team and business office with the Department of Finance and Management. I know that here in this next slide, you're seeing a big yellow box that says 42 million. The reality is the 15 million that's being asked as a transfer is a one-time transfer that will buy down the SLA, which is services under core enterprise services being consumed this fiscal year that we would essentially be charging and invoicing for next fiscal year. If we can go into 26 not charging for those services, they won't have two bills for the same thing at the same time. And so that would create an undue burden on the business offices across the agencies and departments. This $15 million takes into account those core enterprise services to say, all right, these are the users, these are the services, and we have all of that mapped out in detail, and it's been modeled based on the average salary per classified role that would cover this space. It is the cost of those services. It is also removing some of the timesheet billing that some of the agencies are paying for, so that those users would service all state government and not just one entity. And we believe that going into FY27 is like I said, this is a 2 fiscal year effort. That's when we'll be able to fully realize everything. And now I'll be able to come in going into FY27, sit down here in front of you and say, the cost of network services as a service is X number of dollars per user across state government. And now I can actually give much more detailed account for IT spend, but then we can go back to demand and say, this is what we need to reduce going into things now.
So we don't see many agencies come in here proposing a 3-year reduction in the budget, but it's increased services basically. So
it does, and it for me, it's about equity in those services too. And so every department has the same opportunity of priority coming in the door.
would those positions actually move from an agency, from a department to ADS?
They all reside in ADS and they'll all stay in ADS. But we'll just spread it across. So some of the challenges that we're running into is that we have a standard rate that we use no matter who the resource is, $88 and $84. Those are the 2 rates that everybody gets charged. Well, if you account for those resources cannot work more than 60% of their time on a given chargeback effort, doing the math, you're talking about $60,000 a year plus benefits would barely be covered in that rate. So 100% of our timesheet billing resources are driving us into a deficit because we can't actually recover the real cost of their of the resource.
So all the
it's a broken
agencies,
model.
are they all getting this for their 26, or they don't get their new budget number until 27?
They will, when the planning for 27 budget comes out, it will account for this.
Okay.
And so their demand spend, their SLA spend will go down automatically. And they won't be double charged for it coming into a fiscal year, which is what we're trying to avoid.
Right. But we don't always see that in their budgets till 27, till they're.
We won't fully realize it until 27, correct?
Okay.
And what I anticipate coming to see you about next session discussing 27 would also be rate model changes. So I don't think that we could have done that coming out of the gate because the FY26 budget had already been prepared and planned for. So there was no way to estimate anticipated number of hours, especially if we were going to repurpose some of those resources. So that's why it's going to have to be a 2 fiscal year effort.
Okay, anything else?
So, are there any questions? I know it's,
Out of that.
okay. I'm hoping this is not completely outlandish, but I was asked in House Appropriations what happens if we don't approve this? And I think that you can see that on the chart on slide 8, is that this will continue going up, and you will continue seeing increased BAA requests for things that folks didn't plan for because they're not part of the cost build, they didn't anticipate it, they didn't know it was foundations, and they may have taken liberties with a choice that we're likely start building some guardrails around. So I did include the budget crosswalk if there's any items in there, and I will do my best to represent Kate. But I think it's pretty
Is
self-explanatory.
there a difference between a crosswalk and ups and downs? Because some people call it a crosswalk, some people call it up and down. Okay.
Sometimes it goes more like this and sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's over a belly.
So I'm available for any questions. I hope this meets the needs and request of the committee.
Yeah, well, it's hard to argue on that. You're decreasing your. And Brennan is your liaison.
Yeah, I was just gonna raise my hand to give you my card because after the presentation you just gave, we're gonna have to sit down and
I would
get into
welcome that.
more detail. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
So we have a chance to meet with Joint Fiscal Office tomorrow, early afternoon, to go through the details and go through all of the specifics around the numbers and pulling the numbers in, what we're seeing across the agencies from a footprint, and how Joint Fiscal Office will be able to review the specifics behind the numbers.
Our IT expert.
Yeah,
Are you guys doing the other stuff like Vermont buys and those?
Those are, so IT projects, yes.
That's all. How's that going?
Projects or VT buys? Some projects are on a better trajectory than others. I think VT buys, we had an opportunity to look at it and say, is this really what we want for the user community? Is this the experience we want to leave them with,
When
especially?
you say the user community, that's state workers.
Some of them are state workers, but suppliers are
Oh,
also, they're a broader public community for us there. And we had a chance to fix some things that had not been considered when the project was conceived pre-ADS. And I think we're on a very good track, and I expect to see things go live this summer.
Good. Okay, this is your chance to ask your technical questions, get your password reset, anything you want.
Well, I have some good news. So I did have a chance to meet with Kevin Moore, who is the IT director for legislature, and one of the things that we talked about in Senate institutions was the municipality effort to move everybody to .gov. And you as legislators are not on .gov, and I don't mean to steal Kevin's thunder, but I want to, give him a pat on the back that he is in the process of updating your domain space, is what it's called, up to a .gov, which provides protections that state governments should be able to take advantage of that you have not in your current environment. And I think it puts you all in a good position security-wise that you aren't today.
And you said that all our emails will change.
All of your emails will change, yes. But the old one, I guarantee you, will exist for a little while so that it'll be a little bit of an easy change.
What about our passwords?
No.
That's important.
Oh, no.
They won't stay the same.
Not another bag. We'll be able to.
22 years
the
it took me
current
to
email.
memorize my
I'm gonna
password.
create a- Amazing.
Yeah.
It's automatic. I don't even have to set it up.
That's
The
right.
worst is the expense sheet.
That's hard to, when I
The
say,
expense sheets are not intuitive.
that's a separate issue.
So that is
It's
all.
hard when I tell people to email the alleged update.
Yes.
So Vermont.gov will be easier.
Yep, I think you'll be legbt.gov, something even easier than that.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
Great.
perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the update. Yeah.
and I'll be in touch with you.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll ask Senator Brennan if we have any technical questions.
That sounds good. Well,
I'll
sure
ask
he has.
Denise.
I'll think
I'll
about
get
it.
back to you.
Thank you very much.
You're in charge now, you know that.
Yeah.